Happy weekend, everybody. Not legal advice. Like, subscribe, share, comment, whatever, whatever you want. If you have a question, comment, and I will certainly take a peek at it. And if I have an answer, I will answer. Thank you for paying attention. This is about GTII, my current favorite target. I am long on the stock and very bullish. Before we talk about GTII, I wanted to address the issue of greed. A greedy lawyer walks into a bar. Sorry, I didn't mean to be redundant. What type of headaches does a greedy farmer get? Migraines, of course. And last and not least, or maybe least, what do you call a greedy crab? Shellfish. Of course. So now on to a more serious topic, GTII. So this is certainly my opinion. This is done with the purpose of trying, it's being upfront and transparent. Oh, by the way, and because I sometimes get comments that question motivation or whatever, or accuracy, or maybe are concerned or want accuracy. So as to this particular video, if someone wants to give me a lie detector test about what I'm saying or wants me to testify under penalty of perjury, happy to do it. And I would put the same out to management of GTII. If you're willing to do it, then go on a lie detector test or testify under penalty of perjury, which may happen anyway. Happy to do it. So with that in mind, I feel fairly confident about what I'm talking about. But it's my opinion or based upon my personal experience, contact at ever. But the bottom line is, I think, in my opinion, GTII's management is atrocious, but I'm super bullish when they're gone that things will improve dramatically based upon contacts I get, multiple contacts from many individuals representing many different opportunities. So I feel really confident that once management's gone, that those opportunities will come to GTII. Haven't reviewed them, haven't done due diligence, but there's enough interest and it seems like enough opportunity that something would get worked out. Now, just to kind of put in context about my impact on stock value, just to let you know, at the end of the first quarter of 2023, the high stock price was $2.98. When I started doing these, we were well under 30 cents. So I don't really think that these are dramatically impacting the stock price. I'm just trying to provide information so everybody knows what's going on and so that they can make their own decisions. But again, I'm bullish on GTII. I just anti current management. And any company that has bad management should remove it. And this is just another one of those occasions. A lot of people think or are waiting for the impacts of Alpine. I'm aware of the Alpine issues more than I'd like to be. Just quickly, there's an appeal pending in DC that will be decided probably within the next 30 days. If it's decided favorably against Alpine, there are still probably 2 more appeals that they can take. So that's one aspect. So that's probably, another 6 to 12 months, maybe more. And then there's the action in Utah, and there's a disciplinary action to get them removed from the DTCC, et cetera. And the hearing already happened, but we don't have a result. That's subject to multiple appeals also. So that's probably 12 months or more. Now, it's not to say that Alpine could not influence GTII before that, but for the people waiting for a conclusion of Alpine for that to happen, then that's still a decent time off. And so I had no interest in waiting for that to happen. Although if in fact there's a concentrated short position, then at some point in time, they'll have to buy in or else things will change. So I'm with you on that. But in terms of, in the meantime, I felt very strongly that if a deal is done, revenue is brought in, that would cause the stock price to reflect that, and also might encourage shorts to cover, which might in fact cause some type of movement on the shorts without the necessity of the Alpine movement. And in the meantime, since the since the management is doing nothing, or at least in my opinion, is doing nothing to generate revenue, or virtually nothing, then there's no risk in pointing it out, because the shorts are aware of it too. 10K's out there. So the only people that might be in the dark are shareholders. So that's the purpose of this. So obviously GTI is an acquisition company. That's their mission statement. In 2022 and 2023, zero revenue. And as far as I know, in 2024 to date, zero revenue. And I'm not aware of a deal that's pending to close. So that zero revenue, unless they win a lottery, they buy a lottery ticket and win a $4 lottery, it appears that that's how it's going. And my concern starting when I got involved with this, I didn't want management to do nothing and loot the company. That's my concern. I've seen other companies, in my view, where management has done things like that where I wasn't a shareholder. But in GTI, I'm a shareholder. And by the way, the action I filed on April 8th in California Superior Court was as me as the plaintiff against 3 of the directors. David Reichman is being the central defendant. That's pending, although I'm filing a First Amendment based upon the 10K. I'll address that later on. But somebody asked me a question. So I'm the plaintiff. I'm doing it in essence for the community, but it's much simpler if it's just me, and I can be much more aggressive, and that's so be it. So that answers somebody's question about who I was representing. I'm representing myself. That's who I'm representing. So based upon reports I received from many people, the existing management, including Mr. Reichman, were impossible to deal with. And so, at least a half a dozen, maybe more deals where people approached them and they just were impossible to deal with, even though these people were interested in GTII because of the concentrated short position. So they believed if they could do some kind of deal with GTII, acquire stock, that stock would really move. And that's why they were interested in the GTII. I'm going to call it a shell, even though it's not a shell, but I'm going to call it, for our purposes, a shell. So even though in my opinion, management sucked, those people really didn't care, because they would figure if they were going to do a deal, there would be new management, and that the shorts would have to cover, and that whatever shares they got in those transactions, they would be more valuable. So that's why they continued to be interested in the deals. But from what they tell me, it's Mr. Reichman and others, I guess, who keep on pushing them away and not acting in good faith. At least that's what my interpretation of what they told me. Again, multiple people at multiple times. In fact, on yesterday, somebody new contacted me about a deal they had presented to Reichman, who, again, they spoke very unfavorably about their interaction with him. So, it's a lot of potential deals, and it's the concentrated short position that have people interested. And one thing to note is, as there's more dilution of GTII, that probably reduces the impact of the short. So that's a concern I also had, whether these guys are diluting GTII to the extent they're diluting the short deal. And I don't know why they're doing it, other than perhaps for personal interest or otherwise, but that's the way it goes. And recently, and I think I indicated this, as of April 16th, the directors sold 300,000 shares. And I'm sure in 3 months, they'll sell another 300,000 shares or more. Because Reichman, for example, has a substantial number of shares, substantially north of 35 million, substantially north of that. And there's nothing stopping him from selling those shares, other than, proceedings could be had to do a clawback. But that's a risk. So that makes me uncomfortable. He's on a plan. So if he went off the plan, that would be a problem. But he hasn't seemed to been too concerned about what's going on to this point in time. I started expressing my concerns to GTII, and including Mr. Rabari, at least on one occasion, very early February of 2024. And I'd heard from many people prior to that time. Sent a warning letter to GTI on February 6th. I said, basically, unless you tell me what you're going to do to close a deal, I'm going to have to take legal action. March 3rd, so about 4 weeks passed. That's their great skill in communicating. 4 weeks passed, and I got contacted by the attorney for GTII, who reflected himself as such and was copying also the director, so I feel comfortable that he was, Jack Vitale. And he sent me a letter on March 3rd, which is in response to my February 6th letter. And they indicated that GTI is moving to identify an acquisition target as soon as possible. Target, which doesn't make sense if they had already identified a target, but the target is a separate entity not controlled by GTII. Told me to wait for the 10K for important details. He's promised that it was March 31st or before that we'd see the 10K. He promised also that would have important details about the ongoing attempts by management to close the transaction in good faith. He repeated that, I think, on March 4th, that the 10K is going to be filed by March 31st. Repeated it multiple times. He also volunteered on March 11th that small entities like GTII don't always adhere to corporate formalities. So he was suggesting that maybe they hadn't dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, without being specific. But he said that. And just to kind of give you an idea of my attempts to get, and they've gotten more severe as time has gone on based upon the lack of response. So I was estimating that since February, I've sent out between maybe 75 emails to the GTI management. And if I send it out to management, I would send out to counsel. I'd copy Reichman, Griffin. Now I'm copying Rabari, Markowitz, the other attorney. Those are 5 people. So there's multiple people getting these emails, and it's 75 of them. So it can't be the case that nobody doesn't know. So I'm sending out these multiple emails. I'm asking for information. As time goes on, I grow concerned about the accuracy information because they're telling me they're going forward. Wait till March 31st because we got this stuff ongoing, and in the background, I'm hearing from all these people who say to the contrary. So it makes me doubt what they're saying. But I agree because somebody asked me, wait, hold off doing anything legal. So I do hold off till I think the end of March. And then somebody says, hold off a few more days. And I do that. And then finally, April 8th of 2024 is when I filed a lawsuit in LA Superior Court, where it is currently pending. So the fact I had to wait didn't cause me a lot of pleasure. It didn't make me happy because, again, I thought it was BS, but I had to be fair. So I gave them the fair opportunity to comply, perform, do something. Now, what's also interesting is I looked at the recently filed 10K, and it says that David Reichman resides in New York, and I think he represents to the contrary. And I think at least my understanding is that's not accurate either amongst everything else. The reason that's important is I filed a lawsuit in California because I believe he's residing in California. And if he's not, then I have to shift. And I've spoken to people about others, potentially about pursuing an action in Nevada where this particular entity is incorporated, GTII. Could be in New York where it's located also. So those discussions have been ongoing also. But currently the lawsuit's in California against the 3 directors. It's going to add a 4th director, by the way, Mr. Gilbert, who just sold a bunch of shares, and whoever else ends up being appropriately added. So again, I went back and looked at some of the filings, and I've discussed them, but I kind of want to address some of them besides the other points, the zero revenue, et cetera, and things that kind of cause me concern now looking back. So this, now looking in context of what's going on now, kind of says a lot. On March 8th of 2023, Pinnacle Accountancy Group, who was handling the accounting for GTII, resigned. So I find that interesting in light of, if you recall, the OTC downlisted GTII on or about April 11th, 2024. So like a month later, based upon continuing concerns regarding accuracy of disclosures regarding insider transaction and beneficial ownership. So to me, it sounds like insider trading and kind of sounds like suspicious transactions. But what I noticed says continuing concerns. So although obviously GTII management didn't disclose the inquiries from the OTC, which led to this, and didn't timely, by the way, disclose this either, by the way, the actual movement on the OTC. But the fact that it says that it's continuing concerns means that the OTC was knocking on their door for quite some time. Because what happens is they send out a notice, eventually, OTC sends out a notice on April 10th that effective April 11th, you are downlisted. And they're not going to do that on a first crack. So who knows how long the OTC was concerned about the disclosures and accuracy of documents from GTI management. But my guess is that's why the accounting firm resigned. That's my guess, but it seems to correlate with the timing. But certainly it's not a new problem. It's an ongoing problem. And what that insider transaction was, I do not know, but it's certainly a problem. And why it hasn't been corrected. Why hasn't management, if there was a concerns about accuracy, why didn't they correct what was inaccurate and get uplisted to a better section of the OTC where they would have more access to capital? If they had more access to capital, then the stock price likely would reflect that. Why didn't they do it? Is it the nature of the transactions that they are trying to hide? Is it the cost of getting a fix done? You know, I'm suspicious about both of those. I've heard information about one or the other. So, but it causes me concern about that, the downlisting and why, and that it was an ongoing problem. So, and why they didn't disclose it. And, you know, is it so bad now that they are afraid to disclose it, and that if they disclose it, it would cause them a whole set of major problems, way beyond just claims of insider trading or stock manipulation, etc. And were there other disclosures that the OTC was concerned about? The issue about the beneficial ownership. What is that? Is that foundations? Is that charitable giving? I don't know. I don't know what that is, but it certainly creates concern. And again, it's not been addressed by management in any respect. Again, operating like it's their own piggy bank. Just reasons why I have complete discomfort with current management. And remember Fattel's reference to the acquisition target. So in the 10K, if you look at it, I guess the only one you could say that's referenced that could be an acquisition target is the AI commerce, but that relates to something that was going on in August of 2023. And even the 10K indicates it's not closed, doesn't give a target date, and Fattel or nobody from GTII has said anything different to the current time frame. That's 8 months. What are we, 8 months? And I know, because I looked at the agreement that's attached to the 10K, there are both sides can get out of that transaction in a snap because there's contingencies for legal or an accounting. So if you're, let's say AI will take, and I'm not speaking for them, I'm just using this as a hypothetical, but let's say AI Commerce decided they didn't want to do the deal because their attorney said, don't do the deal. That contract let them get out for nothing. Easy. So whether that is a deal or not, I don't know. I do know that, or at least my understanding is that in February of 2024, which kind of would be inconsistent with the claim that there's an ongoing transaction, apparently counsel for GTII early February indicated that the deal was dead. I'm not aware of anything that revived that deal. Haven't heard anything from AI Commerce or anybody who knows them that said there's a deal that's going to get done. Even the language that's in the 10K is so cautionary that doesn't suggest a deal is done. Nobody, and I've sent emails, nobody has told me that there's a deal coming, that they're close, they're working on, give me more time. Just to be direct, when I look today, notwithstanding my 75 or so emails, I don't think I've received a response to an email since March 19th. So it's been quite some time. Certainly no notice about that there's AI commerce deal is going to close, or give us some time to close the deal, or etc. Nothing haven't heard anything about that. What's also interesting about that, their claim that that's a deal, they said they had issued 20 million shares for that deal, and apparently it's in escrow. But in the filings they had in their 10K, I think it's either page 17 or page 19 near the bottom, where there's a category for stock for acquisition purposes. And in 2022, I think it references 10 million. 2023, it has nothing. So they say they issued 20 million shares for this purpose, but it's not reflected in that document, and it appears like it should be. It says they claim that there's 20 million in escrow held by an attorney. I don't know which attorney. It may be Mr. Markowitz, but were they actual shares? Is he actually holding shares? And if there's no deal, so what? And along those lines, just to keep in mind, and I went and talked about dilution, end of 2022, the total number of outstanding shares, and all these numbers, by the way, I'm rounding, so don't take me exactly on the number. I'm rounding. So at the end of 2022, there were approximately 260 million outstanding shares, besides whatever naked shorts there were. And at the end of 2023, there were approximately 369 million shares. So they diluted from 22 to 23 approximately 45%. That certainly doesn't help with a short squeeze. And that doesn't take into account the excess and egregious compensation they gave each other, which I will address in a second. So they've diluted 45%. And that was through the end of 2023. We don't know what happened after that. That does include that purported 20 million shares to be used in a transaction, which obviously they haven't used at this point, and which doesn't appear to be, at least as of today, doesn't appear to be a transaction that is anywhere close to closing. So it's an open deal. So, and I believe like the others, they're not going to do a deal until, I don't know if they're going to do a deal, but they're not going to do a deal with existing management under the current terms. Who would? So there's no correction or explanation for the downlisting. There's false assertions about the status of acquisitions. This is my opinion. Falsehoods about the timing of the 10K release. Remember I told you on or before March 31st, no later. Doesn't reference any acquisition as it said it was going to, a real acquisition. So a bunch of problems. And then there's a dividend. Remember the dividend was put out. So there was a prior 8K that disclosed both a dividend separately and also disclosed, as I indicated, in a kind of oblique way, that referenced the delisting. So the dividend was issued, and I think I told you, the OTC markets put out their notice on April 10th. It was effective April 11th. I believe the dividend notice was about April 23rd. And guess what? The 8K that provided notice of the downlisting was put out May 3rd. So like 4 weeks after the event and after the dividend announcement. I found that interesting. I found that timing interesting. Was that, and I think I put out a tweet yesterday, or X, kind of suggesting that maybe they were put out the dividend as they did because they wanted to cover the downlisting and make people forget about that and focus on the dividend. Now, what's interesting about the dividend is somebody contacted me yesterday. I think it was Crypto C, and I think that's who it was, and indicated their experience. And if I wasn't, I apologize. And they related their experience with Fidelity as of current time in trying to get that dividend. And the people at Fidelity indicated, and again, I have my own concerns about Fidelity, obviously, but the people at Fidelity indicated that, one, that when there was a delay in the filing of the 10K, that there couldn't be any selling of shares during that period of time. I don't think management even referenced that. I don't know if it's true, but that's what Fidelity maintained. Beyond that, they indicated that the way that that Fidelity, or at least Fidelity's vision, I don't know if this is truthful or good faith, because I have my concerns about Fidelity, but in their view, there was something about the way that GTII had conducted its business that made it for Fidelity possible not to issue the dividend. Again, I don't know if it's true or not, but there was kind of an oblique reference apparently to the way GTII did things. I don't know if it relates back to that OTC event, and I don't know if it relates to the opinion letter, if that was deficient or not done well enough, but it raises doubts. And the person who contacted me, their concern was that they botch it on purpose so that they wouldn't have to, they've already set aside the shares, but maybe they didn't want to have to issue the, release the shares. It's like 31 million in shares, approximately. It's reflected as issued, but maybe they did it on purpose because they didn't want to have to give them away. Perhaps. I don't know. But it sounds like perhaps they didn't do everything they needed to satisfy brokers to release it. I guess we'll find out on April 29th. That seems to be a key date. But it certainly it provided Fidelity something to talk about with regard to GTI's practices of some note. So again, I find it interesting that dividends issued after the downlisting, but before notice of the downlisting, and still there's problems with it, and maybe problems with the opinion. I don't know. So other concerns I had, we'll find out April 29th. Other concerns I had about the 10K. I mentioned the dilution, 45% in 1 year from 260 million approximately to 370 million shares. All the dilution does is suppress the stock value, especially with the circus run by management in 2024. And again, as I told you before, first quarter of 2023, and that's not the highest stock price ever, but the first quarter of 2023, the high price was $2.98. And when I started this, we were under 30 cents. The dilution, and I don't know what dilution happened in the first quarter, certainly doesn't help. And the selling of the stock by management and no buying certainly doesn't help. It seems to be against the interest of normal shareholders. Zero revenue in 2022 and 23. Zero revenue. And I'm sure zero revenue in 2024 to date. But here's the factor. And this is the concern about my opinion of looting that's going on, or what it appears to be looting, and why I thought it's important to intervene and not just let things play out, because eventually the company will have no value. The expenses for GTII in 2022 were approximately 13 million, and in 2023 approximately 83 million. Zero revenue in both occasions. Compensation to officers compared to 2022, it's officers and some other vague references. It was up $14 million. Again, zero revenue. Directors' fees, which somehow they claim is somehow accumulated, $55 million. The directors include Mr. Reichman, Ms. Griffin, Mr. Gilbert, and Mr. Benedetto, I think. It's not the other Frank B. It's a different Frank. But $55 million for what? What did they do to produce zero revenue 2 consecutive years? I guess it takes skill to produce zero revenue in 2 consecutive years and have your expenses go from 13 million to 83 million. Just let that sink in. Zero revenue, expenses. I think 13 million is too much, but 13 to 83. $4 million extra in cash was used for operations for what? I don't know. In 2023 versus 2022. It's not just $4 million. The total cash used for operations in 2022 was just over $400,000. And the total cash used somehow for operations, probably because they were giving away money or whatever, I don't know why, in 2023 was approximately $4.4 million. Where did that cash go? What was it used for? Why is there no explanation? That's a problem. Is a lot of these categories just kind of thrown out, no explanation. 17 point, and this is 2023, and I think it's 250% more than in 2022. 17.4 million in charitable donations. When shareholders are getting trashed, and did management have a self-interest in any of these transactions? In other words, is it to a charity that they are involved with? What was the purpose? What's the benefit to them? But 17.4 million in charitable donations, further diluting and suppressing the stock price for shareholders? Absolutely unsupportable. Loss before taxes, compared 2022 versus 2023. Again, zero revenue in both. 13 million in 2022, almost 97 million in 2023. Absurd. Again, salary for Mr. Reichman in 2023, $600,000. For what? I don't know. So I looked at those. I looked at what everybody had said, caused me concern. So after that, I sent some more emails. I told them that I would go public, kind of telling everybody what's going on. I gave them a couple opportunities to do something. So when I say a couple opportunities, this is after giving them about 50 opportunities, but I still gave them a couple opportunities. So the email that I'm going to read from is April 18th. I'm sure I know I contacted them later that day and gave them an opportunity to do something. And the following day I did also, but they do not seem fit on trying to resolve the problems. And again, as silly as it seems, I'm super bullish once this management crew is gone, that there will be a substantial improvement in the economics and stock price of GTII. Not financial, not legal advice, obviously. So didn't hear from them, sent them numerous emails. The last email, I'm going to read some part of it for you. So this is directed at the attorneys, two of them, Reichman, Griffin, and it's also to Mr. Rabari. And again, I'm just going to read from part of it. Dear sirs and madam, to be clear, this is directed at all directors and officers of GTII, as well as incoming COO, Mr. Rabari. It is possible that prior to the release of the recent 10K that Mr. Rabari was not aware of the shenanigans that senior management had engaged in during 2023, parentheses, including apparent insider trading or unsavory and potential illegal trading resulting in a delisting to pink sheet status with resulting loss of liquidity. Additionally, egregious dilution and giveaways of millions of shares and seeming or apparent questionable donations to self-interest charities in an apparent last attempt to loot the company. Next paragraph. I know that Mr. Rabari is fully aware of the structural and legal deficiencies in GTII, as that is what the 4/9/2024 PR said, surprisingly published just after my California lawsuit was filed. Mr. Fattel had advised me of the same, and I'm sure Mr. Markowitz and all directors, including Mr. Gilbert, were all aware of the ongoing deficiencies but did nothing. That is the way it certainly looks to me and many, many others who have reached out to me. Then I have a paragraph where I talk about that my actions filed in California, that I'm contemplating and have spoken to Nevada Council and others have too, and that's potentially in the cards, and the ramifications could be a clawback, which means that sales or monies that are generated could be brought back from those who made those sales, including directors. And then I go back, the next paragraph, I say, as you ignored my demand to cease, and this is after I noticed that the stock sale occurred on April 16th, as you ignored my demand to cease selling GTII shares, I sent you the reference yesterday that the 10b5 sales plans do not immunize egregious misconduct. Just to be clear, in my California action and in any future Nevada action, Any insider of any sort who continues or begins to sell further GTI shares, further suppressing the stock price for shareholders, will be added as a DOE defendant. And a DOE defendant is, if you don't know the name or if someone is responsible, you list basically a numeric, and then you add them as you find out if they have responsibility. So my intention is to add Mr. Gilbert because he just sold a bunch of shares. And I told Mr. Reichman he doesn't need to respond to the complaint yet because I'm going to amend it to add Mr. Gilbert and also to add detail that arose arising out of the 10K. I indicated that it's not worth it now, in my opinion, to follow the misguided directions of a senior executive who's leading you down the wrong path. Don't let greed have you make a wrong decision. I indicated that even though this obviously gets worse and worse each day, the situation can still be resolved. So this is 2 days ago. Still trying to provide them an out, as I've done literally 50 or more times. The situation can be resolved if the board resigns, Mr. Rabari reconsiders his employment choice, or contacts me, something, have a discussion. He can tell me why I'm wrong or what he intends to do differently. And the CEO properly decouples from the company. I do not wish any ill will on anyone. However, notwithstanding what you may think of me, my concerns, which I asserted in early February and are public, have been clearly borne out and now confirmed by you in filings publicly. And I basically asked them to, they want out and they want to cooperate, I'll give them a release. And that's the most recent filing. Nobody responded. I told them it was going to go public. So it makes me wonder what their thinking is. Now, I understand being careful, but as time has gone on, and then I filed a lawsuit, they're aware of that. So they knew that I was going to do what I was going to say. That being the case, why would they take the risk of not responding and trying to resolve this? Why would they take that risk? What is in the record that they do not want to produce? What is there? Because that's the only thing that makes sense. They must be hiding something so that they find so repulsive or problematic that they're willing to take the risk. And apparently the other board members are willing to go for the ride and risk their own financial beings or otherwise. Find it amazing. So with that in mind, again, I hope that the board and everybody associated resigns and stops and gets out. If they do, I have no interest in pursuing anything, but if they make me pursue it, I will. And I am in the process of expanding it. In the meantime, anybody who wants to let the board and GTI management know how they feel, good or bad, go for it. I give you my blessings. Make it known. Call them up. Speak to them. Send them emails. Let them know how you feel. Encourage them. If you agree with me, encourage them to step down and get out of here. Get out of our way. Because again, once they get out of our way, I think there are so many opportunities available to make this a go. Wow, this is a long video. I apologize for this ridiculously long video, but I kind of wanted to take my time going through it. I think you now know kind of all my concerns. And again, with the great interest that everybody else has in GTII because of that short position. But we can't trust management because of the way they dilute the stock, because of their, the way that they issued shares, because of the way they handled their business. My opinion. Anyway, hope that helps, this ridiculously long video. Any questions, let me know. Be well and take care.